Naam, so Dr. mtazamaji, ndivyo tulivyoadhimisha siku kuu ya Labor Day hii leo, ikiwa ni tarehe 1 mwezi wa 5 mwaka 2025, na mengi yamezungumzwa, lakini jambo ambalo tumeweza kulipata siku hii ya leo ni kwamba Rais William Ruto ameweza kuamuru ile tume ya PSC kuhakikisha kwamba kila muajiri aweze kueffect ile 6% wage increment haraka iwezekanavyo, jambo ambalo sidhani kama litakupokelewa vyema na waajiri. Martin.
Asante. Kwa kweli I hold the same opinion kwamba itakuwa vigumu sana kwa makampuni mengi ku effect the 6% increment ile rais anatangaza. Kwa sababu wakati tunaongeza mshahara, nilikuwa nimesema hapo awali, wakati tunaongeza mshahara kunafaa kukuwa na commensurate raise ya revenue ya hizi kampuni zenye zinaajiri. Itakumbukwa kwamba serikali sio mwajiri mkuu katika nchi, ni wale tunaita private sector. Na wakati private sector haijafanya hatua za ku-improve production ya vile wanapata mapato, ukiwaambia tena waongezee wafanyikazi mshahara, inakuwa ni vigumu sana, kwa sababu unakuwa umeenda kwa ile kikapu chenye kimekuwa tu kikichukuliwa kila kitu, kutoka housing levy, kutoka all these other costs. Remember kwamba mwajiri anapaswa pia kucontribute katika zile taxes. Sasa ukirudi tena umwambia aongeze 6%, kama hatujafanya mpango kabambe ya kukuza mapato ya hiyo kampuni, tena inakuwa ni vigumu sana kwao kufanya hivyo.
Naam, Javas, labda nikukaribisha, karibu sana. Na kuja kuchelewa, lakini unaona kwamba hiyo amri ambayo iliweza kutolewa siku hii ya leo ni kwamba ni kufumba tu watu macho, manake ni jambo ambalo wengi wanasema haliwezekani.
Unajua kuna changamoto nyingi sana kuhusiana na masuala ya kuleta afueni kwa wafanyikazi wa nchi, na kwa kipindi cha miongo kadhaa, tuseme miongo mitatu hivi, kumekuwepo na juhudi ya kuweza kuongeza hata kile kipato cha wafanyikazi. Unaona hapa Mheshimiwa Rais ameweza kupendekeza nyongeza ya 6%, ilhali ukiangalia pia bado hali ya uchumi ni tatanishi kwa mashirika, makampuni, kadhalika kwa wale ambao ni waajiri. Kwa sababu ukiangalia katika masuala ya maslahi ya wafanyikazi, tuko na serikali kama mshikadau, tuko na waajiri, tuko na wafanyikazi wenyewe, pamoja tuko na mashirika ambayo ni miungano ya wafanyikazi. Hawa wote nastahili kwamba waweze kushirikiana ili kuwa maslahi ya wafanyikazi yaweze kutiliwa maanani. Ukiangalia sasa hivi siku ya leo ni miaka 139 tangu kuanzishwa kwa vuguvugu na siku hii ya wafanyikazi duniani. Kule ambapo ilianzia kule Marekani na kina Matayo Maguire na Peter Maguire. Lakini ukiangalia katika hii miaka yote 138 bado kuna changamoto nyingi sana kuhusu maslahi ya wafanyikazi. Mheshimiwa Rais pia ameweza kusema kwamba katika baadhi ya afueni ambazo anapendekeza kuwa ile ambayo ni gratuity na pension ya wafanyikazi haitakuwa taxed. Haya yote bado, japokuwa ni ile njia bora ya kuweza kuleta afueni kwa kiuchumi kwa maslahi ya wafanyikazi, nadhani kwamba ingestahili kuwepo na mkakati wa kuleta pamoja katika meza ya mazungumzo serikali na waajiri, waone kwamba je, pendekezo hili la 6% linaweza tekelezwa kwa njia gani, ni kwa mara moja ama ile ambayo katika kimombo naita a first approach katika kipindi cha mwaka mmoja ujao, ili kwamba pia waajiri wasione kwamba wanazidi kufinywa. Kumbuka kwamba kuna mambo bado ya housing levy, mambo ya SHA kadhalika, na ingekuwepo kwamba ingekuwa ni jambo bora sana kwa mfano kwa sababu ya ile kipato ambacho waajiriwa wanaenda nacho nyumbani. Kama kwa mfano mwaka huu wa fedha pia hiyo housing levy iweze kupunguzwa, kwa mfano toka 2.5 hadi pengine 1%, ili kwamba wafanyikazi waweze kupata pay nzuri ambayo wanaenda nayo nyumbani.
Naam, tukiachilia hapo, tushikilie hapo labda kwa hivi sasa tuende Uhuru Gardens ambapo mwenzetu Jimmy Mbogo yuko na baadhi ya wakazi. Jimmy, kwa mtazamo wako, kama umeweza kuzungumza nao, sijui kwamba wakazi kutoka eneo hilo la Uhuru Gardens wameweza kuridhishwa na hotuba ambao waliweza kusikia hii leo?
Shukran sana Lulu. Utaniruhusu niweze transition to the English language just to make sure that we have a bit of an understanding. So the process has the ceremony rather has just come to an end a few minutes ago with a statement from the president, which covered a number of issues that is ranging from the instructions that were issued last year towards the end during the Labor Day celebration last year, instructing that the minimum wage be increased by 6%. This has turned out to be quite a contentious issue, with the president also just highlighting that some of the employers are yet to do this. And if you have noticed something quite interesting in today's Labor Day celebration, unlike has been the case previously, where the employers have been given an opportunity to respond to how they intend to address some of the workers' challenges, this year the Federation of Kenya Employers did not have an opportunity to address the congregation here and to sort of give their side of the story on what happened and why some of these adjustments have taken longer than maybe it was anticipated. And I'm just here with my colleague Dennis Otieno to understand. I just want to get his feedback in terms of what stood out for him, but also one thing that has also stood out during today's celebration is quite an underwhelming speech, if you would call it, from the KOTU Secretary General, who spoke about numerous issues, but minimally about the issues affecting workers. And of course, something else that came out from the CS Labour in terms of his speech, just looking at the welfare of workers, talking about issues of sexual harassment, and calling those that are sort of raising an alarm in regards to external jobs or export labor within the country as detractors, more or less. And Dennis, I just want to get your sentiments in terms of what do you make of the statements that we have had, particularly from the President, from the KOTU Secretary General, as well as the CS for Labour.
Okay. Clearly looking at, thank you, Jimmy. It's good being on this other side. Clearly looking at, listening to the speeches and seeing, what the leaders have been saying. We see for the first time the Federation of Kenyan Employers, the employers' body has actually been denied, a chance for it to address workers in this particular event. And this is the first time that this has been happening, because this has happened because ideally, traditionally, we've actually seen after KOTU speaks, the Federation of Kenyan Employers has to give, its position also on some of these matters. And from what we've seen, seeing what Atwoli, the KOTU Secretary General, said, he actually said that the employer's body, these are some of the accusations that he made, that the employer's body is actually undermining, the authority of the Kenyan government, and this is due to its failure to ratify some two ILO conventions. They're talking about 189 and 188, and according to Atwoli, this is actually, weakening Kenya's position when it comes to upholding some of those international standards. So clearly, we did not expect to see this sort of friction, playing out so vividly, especially looking at today's meeting. But from the president's speech, I've seen he's touched on quite a number of things. Of course, talking about offering of targeted relief to workers. Of course, with the finance bill now being brought to the floor of the parliament, I'm sure he's been trying to defend it, of course, and trying to clear the air with regard to, some people talking of there could be some, some hidden taxes or some hidden areas that the finance bill is yet to be, that could be in the finance bill. But clearly from his speech, he has assured them that this is a finance bill that will cover all Kenyans and, address all their issues. Of course, he also talked about another key issue being one going to pensioners, saying that they will now be tax exempt, and also small businesses. A key issue here being, that they are said to benefit from simplified tax processes. But one of the key things that I thought stood out was the talk about, savings, and really putting a lot of emphasis on saving, so that once workers retire, they must ensure that they do live a decent life. and that starts with the country saving, and that's why he emphasized there's a reason why they are pushing employers to ensure that our workers do save during their time at work.
All right, so Dennis, the other thing that has come out during this session is the fact that when you look at where the country is in terms of economic growth, Kenya being ranked as the 6th biggest economy on the continent, yet it's also clear that from a lot of Kenyans and the sentiments that we are getting is that disposable income has significantly reduced, and so it is quite a hard nut to crack, particularly when you're trying to marry these two, that on one hand the economy is projected to have done pretty well, but on the other hand Kenyans are not feeling that impact. But Dennis, there's something I really want to get your thoughts on, and particularly this is in as far as deductions go. Now, the president and those who spoke are talking about statutory deductions being based on the gross, on the net income and not the gross. I just want to know, what are your sentiments on this?
Thank you. I'm still trying to get used to being on this other side.
Don't worry, it comes naturally eventually.
Let me be as simple as possible. I mean, the key thing here has to do with the rate of inflation. Kenyans are still battling the high cost of living. You look at people's spending power. I mean, consumers are reducing their spending. They're trying to cut down on non-essential items and focus on the basic items, looking at food, be it food, rent, or transport. So they're trying to focus all, their spending on those essential items and leaving out non-essential items. But even as they do that, you still realize that, inflation is still eating into so many of their budgets. And this is why, even by the end of the month, for those who are salaried workers, you can't tell the difference, whether there have been some relief that have been offered during that particular period. Still, it's very difficult for people to make ends meet with what they have, even after some of these reliefs have been introduced.
All right, so Dennis, before we hand it over back to Lulu and her panel, I think for me the other thing that has stood out is the fact that now government is talking about trying to address the question around outsourcing, particularly when it comes to Kenyan employers who say they now say that a lot of Kenyan employers are outsourcing some of the opportunities and giving it to other people. But I think from where, and allow me to play devil's advocate, but I think from the employer's perspective, everyone is trying to cut cost. At the end of the day, it's about effective management of your revenues and effective management of your costs. So if you're getting cheaper labor, particularly by outsourcing some of the duties that you would ideally have been forced to employ, then that cuts down in terms of your cost of operation. But also, there's something that the president has touched on, and this is on the issue of using the pay slip as an element, just trying to identify the people who are eligible to get to, or rather being eligible for affordable housing consideration. What do you make of that, then, even as we wrap up?
It all boils down to one thing. Clearly, you can see there's a reason why even employers on this other side have actually failed to implement, the 6% minimum wage that the president had actually promised. It's all eating up into their budgets. It's all eating up into the operations of so many employers in the country, and they actually, at some point, they're actually giving employees two options. We either reduce our workforce or we reduce our pay and maintain, some of these salaried workers who are still working.
All right, Dennis, thank you so much. Now, we just want to transition and speak to a few Kenyans to understand what are their sentiments, what do they make of this address today, and also just trying to understand what are some of the key things that stood out for them, even as we try and just wrap up here. There's a gentleman here. Can you just tell us your name, what you do? I will hold the microphone for you,
okay,
and just summarize what stood out for you.
My name is Honorable Yusuf Chanzu. I'm the chairman of National Housing Corporation.
Okay.
So, leo nimefurahi sana na speech ya president na vile Atwoli aliongea. Kwa maana hii nchi we have got a lot of youngsters who can be able to work. Na unajua ile kitu ambayo ileta mzungu hapa ilikuwa kilimo. Wheat farms from Narok up to Nakuru, and then the White Highlands. Lakini because of poor policy, unajua watu wengi wanaenda kwa mashamba wanalima, lakini wakati when they harvest, wakati wanataka kupeleka mahindi kwa cereals board, people are given license to import, so you can't sell the mahindi. So what has been said, if it can be implemented, we'll create chakula and create employment. Number two, hii maneno ya affordable housing is a very great idea, because you see the other issue that was raised, which I think is very important, hii maneno ya deposit. People, the houses are cheap because land belongs to, it's public land. So that's why land is zero rated. Shamba inakuwa zero rated, that's why they're cheap. But the problem has been this issue of deposit. Like if it is 1.5 million, somebody is supposed to pay 150. So I think the point government should be able to implement that. But I think the most important thing, president anaenda kila mahali. Unajua president ni wa kila mtu. Akienda mahali anaongea maneno ya barabara, anaongea maneno ya kilimo. The poor are there. People like ministers and so on. The elected leaders and so on should be able to follow up. So that they can realize, like this one of agriculture. I'm very happy that my friend Mutai Kagwe is Minister for Agriculture. They should be able to follow it up so that we can have chakula and we can create employment for our people.
All right, thank you so much.
And housing our people. Yes. Our people should go for housing because the country is changing. There are people in Kibera here who are paying for a single room a rent of 8,000. But this affordable housing, you can be able to pay 3,000 shillings. And in 10 years, 15 years, the house is yours. All right,
asante sana. Now, Lulu, if you could just give me a few minutes. I've seen the CEO of the Federation of Kenya Employers, Madam Jacqueline Mugu here. And thank you so much for making time to speak to Citizen TV. We are live on air right now. And one of the things that we have noticed with today's celebration is that the Federation of Kenya Employers did not have an opportunity to address the gathering here. You've also been accused of sort of undermining the government. And I just want to know, what is your first reaction on these issues?
We were very surprised that for the first time in its 60 years of existence, COTU did not give a chance to the Federation of Kenya Employers to address the gathering. This is a very important day in the calendar of the labor sector. It's a tripartite event, so that is something that is very strange. The key issue we have picked is that COTU is accusing employers of not implementing the 6% minimum wage, which was given by the president last year. During Labor Day last year, the president directed the parties, COTU and FKE, under the Ministry of Labor to sit down, constitute the wages councils that deal with issues of wages, and for the wages councils to discuss and agree on a percentage increase on the minimum, which should not be less than 6%. So the Federation of Kenya Employers maintain that we should constitute these wages councils because they have the mandate to discuss and negotiate minimum wages. That took time. It was only done when CS Mutua came into office. So in November last year, the wages councils did meet and reach an agreement. We signed that agreement in State House. Within days of the agreement being signed, FKE issued a circular to employers advising them to implement the new statutory minimum wages. So it is not right that employers or Federation of Kenya Employers has objected to the implementation of the statutory minimum wages. Neither have we been made aware of any dispute, any company in the private sector under our membership that is being accused of not implementing or has not implemented. We'd really like to get that detail and be able to address it. Secondly, there is the issue of ratification of two international labor conventions, one on domestic work, one on violence and harassment at work. In principle, the Federation supports the ratification by Kenya of these two conventions, in particular the one on violence and harassment at work, which is a major issue. I was the vice president of the International Labour Conference that passed this convention, so we support it. But we want due process to be followed. There are international conventions which dictate the process to be followed. A country should be ready, should look at its processes, its laws, its systems to be ready for implementation. So that's what we want done, then we will be ready to ratify. But it is unfortunate that instead of handling issues through dialogue, which this sector runs on, we are then exposed to the kind of scenario we went through today.
All right, thank you so much for making time to speak to Citizen TV, and don't go too far, stay with us. We understand we are due for a commercial break, so we'll be taking that break. When we come back, Lulu Hassan will be with you.
Kushirikiana kazini ni kujenga Kenya.